When I was a young college student at the University of Kansas in conservative country, I was naively very liberal and the leader of a campus political party called Action. How I got that job is a story in itself, but John F. Kennedy was involved. Action invited Pete Seeger to sing at a small gathering, and while talking to him after the concert, he said, "Brian, always try to use a poem or a song to get your point across, because no matter how bad you read or sing, I have heard worse." This one's for you, Pete. The distracting election takes time, money, and such, while the majority retains their professional touch, setting a good example for the rest of us. Town managers suspended for good reason and such, while the majority retains their professional touch, finally getting things done for the rest of us. Our plight is on Facebook, Google, YouTube, and such, while the majority retains their professional touch, setting a good example for the rest of us. There's lying, cheating, stealing, and such, while the majority retains their professional touch, finally getting things done for the rest of us. There's jumping, threatening, booing, and such, while the majority retains their professional touch, setting a good example for the rest of us. There's hollering, texting, and passing the buck, while the majority retains their professional touch, finally getting things done for the rest of us. There are people out of order, yelling, cursing, and such, while the majority retains their professional touch, setting a good example for the rest of us. There's poor attendance, pushback, repeating, and such, while the majority retains their professional touch, finally getting things done for the rest of us. The charter's ignored, misinterpreted, misquoted, and such, while the majority retains their professional touch, setting a good example for the rest of us. The grand list won't grow. Budgets have been overrun, while the majority retains their professional touch, finally getting things done for the rest of us. The eligible voters' answer to this is so easy to see. Please vote row A or please vote row C. Voters setting a good example and finally getting things done for the rest of us. Hi everybody, this is Brian O'Haron, back to the basics. I got a guest with me tonight, Ken Fracasso, former mayor and very successful businessman in town. And he's going to help me with my little show tonight because, as you heard in the song, there's a lot of things happening in our town now that I would consider very childish, very amateurish, and not really the way to conduct business. And when Ken was mayor, we had a similar situation, and people were jumping him down and doing all that kind of thing. And he handled it very professionally. And Marcia Sterling is doing the same thing now. While they are jumping up and down and doing all the things I mentioned in my little poem there, Marcia is listening, and she's paying attention, and then she's getting on with business as normal and try to get things done for the rest of us. I did mention to Ken once when he was mayor and people were jumping up and down with signs, and much worse than is happening in today when we had the George Clausen incident, that perhaps he should get a sergeant at arms, or he should get some police in the audience and He said, oh, no, let's just let them go on with it. Let's let them have their say, and then we'll get on with business as usual. So Ken was born in our town here in Winsted. He been here all his life. He was in a very well-known family, so he does have roots in the community, and he knows it very well. He's involved in the local church here. He has his own business, and I'm just going to tell a little bit about his business because I did ask him years ago how he got started in his business, and I think it's very important for younger people to understand. He had a truck. Well, I guess he was driving taxis and cars and things, livery type of vehicles. And then he bought a truck, and when he bought the truck, he was hauling things for people and doing things like that. And then one day he went down to O&G in Torrington on Igley and Gervasini that I can remember when they only had one truck during the flood in 1955. I rode in it a couple days when they were hauling away mud and things from the downtown in Torrington. And he went there, and he left the truck outside, and he went inside and talked to one of the senior executives of O&G, and he explained to them that he was a businessman and that he was in his own business, and he had this truck, and he wanted to get some business from them, hauling things. So the executive said to him, well, show up here tomorrow morning at 6 o'clock, and we'll give you a job to do. We'll see how you perform. And Ken did that. He got there. He was on time. I'm sure he wasn't late. He didn't skip it. He went down there. He got the job. He performed well on it, got paid, and now he's the owner of probably 15 to 20 trucks, and he also subcontracts another 15 to 20 trucks at peak times of the year, and he's got a very successful business in town. He employs people locally. He spends a lot of money around the town with his business, and he's also a donator to various causes. I don't want to start a flood to his door for money, but he's a very, very good citizen, a good resident. He was elected as a selectman, and he got more votes than anybody in his first run, in his first try. And he was on the last strong finance board that we had in our town. His finance board was the strongest finance board that I can remember in a long, long time. And now we have another strong finance board. And Kenny is advisor to them. He's a close worker with them, and they listen to him a lot because he knows the town, he knows the people, he knows what needs to be done. And the new strong finance board, Marcia and Glenn and all, they really have a lot of knowledge of finance, and they complement each other quite nicely. Kenny, of course, has to make a profit every year too, so he's aware of what it takes to make a dollar, earn a dollar, and spend a dollar. So I'm going to introduce Ken now to you, and then I'm going to ask him a few questions over the next hour or so, and together we'll try to give you a rough idea of what we think of things around here. So as a longtime resident and business owner, Ken, not to mention a former selectman and mayor that I mentioned earlier, what do you see as the main challenges facing Winsted right now?
Well, I think first and foremost, Brian, is that there's a loss of confidence in the senior leadership, not only on the town side but on the school side. There's no oversight. There's no performance records that we can go on. There's a lack of financial flexibility. There's stagnation. There has been, and it continues to be, and as far as the economy of the town goes. There's no growth, there's no sustainability, and what's really troubling is amongst the Board of Selectmen, there's no consensus of a way out of this mess. There hasn't been for a long time, and I think until some of these things get straightened out, that we're just going to be stagnant. We're going to stay right where we are, and that's where Glenn and Marcia, along with the rest of the Republican board, which is they're all freshmen, right? I mean, Jorge, Dan, Candace. I mean, it's their first time at this, and I think that they've done an outstanding job. Once Marsh and Glenn came on board, they actually started doing some things and getting them done.
Yeah, so we've actually stepped. It was kind of interesting because the voters in November did say they wanted new leadership in town, and they voted the Republican Party in to the majority on the Board of Selectmen and what I consider to be even more important, the Finance Board of our town. I think about I would say 90% of our problem here is a financial problem, and we need really strong people in there. Now, unfortunately, or what, the mayor, Lisa Smith, she did a real good job at putting out the emergency tax thing that she had to do right away when she got in. It's my own opinion that the Democrats would have done that too. They were just trying to hold off till after the election. But the Republicans made that a promise that they would put out a supplemental tax to try to get us at least some oxygen to breathe for a while we could address the other problems. Well, Lisa, after she got moving, she also, by the way, insisted on going for the steep grant, $500,000 that we went for the Lambert K properties that we own as a town. We paid $1 for them about 20 years ago, and they're very polluted, and we still have to find out exactly what the state of the pollution is now, and they're working on that. You'll be able to see that from week to week on the selectmen programs. But she did that. So she did two real big things. She did a lot of other things too, and she got momentum going in the right direction. And then all of a sudden, she had some personal problems, another and other duties to do, and she had another selectman in the majority also wanted to resign for personal reasons. So they both resigned. And the Republicans, very wisely, appointed Marcia Sterling and Glenn Albanesius to help these younger people that Kenny mentioned to manage the finance board and the selectmen in the town. And we're very lucky because Marcia, of course, has this fantastic background of between MIT and Wellesley and the University of Chicago, where she has a finance degree. She's got an economics degree. She's got studied math at the best school in the country, MIT, and she's worked 20 years in the investment banking area. And she has a lot of experience. She retired young, fairly well off, out in Winchester, on an old farm with her husband, James Roberts, who's also a pretty good financial person. And she studied the town finances for about 10 years before she got into office. She was on several committees and commissions, and we're very lucky to have her. And, of course, when Glenn stepped back in again, he was a selectman twice before, he compliments her very well because Glenn, like Kenny, grew up in Winsted. He went to Oliver Wolcott Technical School, studied carpentry, went to the local college here, and he studied business administration, and now he's a businessman in the area. There's a lot of business around this whole part of Connecticut. By the way, Kenny does business from Washington to Maine and all the way out to the Midwest. So his trucks are all over the place, and it's a very, very challenging business to run. And there are high points of the year, and there are slow points of the year. And there's all kinds of management by objectives, and there's a lot of kind of management by exception. If you sit down there for a day or two, you'll see where things pop up all the time. People get flat tires, the stuff falls off of trucks all over the place, and it's all got to be managed very, very rapidly. So the one thing I want to say to you, Kenny, is that these problems you just mentioned, they've been around for a long time. This is not. This isn't an overnight problem.
No, it's something that's been around for a while. And I just want to take a step back. You mentioned when Lisa was in that they passed a supplemental tax, and there is. I don't watch a lot of these shows, but some things resonate with you. And one of the things is a lot of people go on TV and say a lot of things. Unfortunately, a lot of it is mistruths. But one thing that was mentioned quite a while ago is, the general public really doesn't have a clear understanding of everything that goes on. There's lots of things that go on behind the scenes. And the Democrats, I've come to realize over the last 7-8 years, are great ones for latching on to someone, whether it's a town manager, a finance director, and singing their praises. And, they ride that thing right into the sunset. However, in the case of this supplemental tax, I was asked to sit on a small committee, finance committee, to discuss these financial problems. And it was myself, Selectman Perez, town manager Dale Martin, and Robin Manuel, at the time our finance director. And Robin and I were in 100% agreement that we needed this supplemental tax to go along with this loan that we were going to try to secure from Bank of America. And Candy was absolutely dead set against it. And there were several TV shows that went on there, our town community lawyer, town lawyer, whatever her title is, and her host, and some of the selectmen, they go on there, and in one hand, they're saying that these are the professionals, we need to follow their cue. But when something comes up that they don't agree with, they turn and run, and they try to make their own case for certain things. And it wasn't just that financial debacle that we were in, but the hiring of the public works director. There was a lot of outside influence from that area, and it wasn't from the Republican side, I will say. But there's things like this that go on constantly, and they cover these things up and try to switch the information to other areas to take the heat off it, so to speak. And that's the unfortunate part. But I think that the loan to carry us, get us over that hump, it wouldn't happen without the supplemental tax. And it's unfortunate. It was a hard pill to swallow, but it's gotten us to where we are. But we need to continue on the road, if we're going to get out of this.
Sure. I mean, there's no doubt about it. That supplemental tax was going to happen one way or the other.
Right.
And what you just mentioned is a lot of politics that gets in the way of all this kind of stuff, and that when we're supposed to be managing the finances of the town, and where the finance board is the ultimate responsibility for the finances of the town and for dealing with the auditors. That's right in the charter. Right. And it's time to stop the politics, to deal with the real facts and the issues, as we like to do as business people. Otherwise, we'd be fooling ourselves. So while you try, like when you were in and when Marcia's in and even when Lisa's in, while you're trying to do the right thing for the people by getting all the facts on the table so that you can deal with the real problems in a priority order, other people are trying to play politics and trip you up because there's an election coming up.
And that was a key. And that was a key time with the finances. I mean, we were the focus of national attention. The state was watching us, especially the State Board of Education was watching us extremely closely. And I honestly believe in my heart that if we had not passed that supplemental tax, there would have been a different resolve from the State Board of Education. I mean, they were adamant.
Yeah, I agree with that.
This stuff had to be changed, and it had to be changed, in a complete fashion, not just, nipping at the bud around the edges.
Yeah, and they're not stupid either. They understand there's politics involved in these things, and while people are gambling to try to get elected first and then do it, when it's needed now, you can't do that. So,
but we are so lucky right now. I mean, you touched on it briefly. Marcia Sterling is steeped in financial problem solving, and I mean it's something she's done for 20 plus years. She has a world of experience, and we are so fortunate to have an opportunity to have her help lead us through this mess. Along with Glenn Albanesius, who's returned. He was, as you stated, he was a two-time selectman. He complements her very well, and as well as the remaining Republican board does also. I mean, everyone's working together in this, and I think it would be an absolute sin if they weren't allowed to continue the work that they've done.
That's right. Now, you're supporting Mayor Marcia Sterling and Selectman Albanesius, as I am. Mm-hmm. I just don't see any other choice. I mean, this is a very, very simple decision for anybody who's ever been in business and who understands how deep a situation we're in here. So what do you see as their personal strengths?
Well, as I stated already, Marcia has a wealth of financial experience. I mean, and Glenn is a typical. He's been here Winstonite, most of his life. He understands the hardships. He's put his family through, educated him right here through the school system, and he's been on the board. As I said, he has experience. So I mean, those background help them tremendously to get us to where we need to get to.
Yeah, she also has, I might add, done a lot of real hard, big dollar jobs around the world, and she has built up all kinds of connections around the world in the financial industry for 20 years of helping them manage their money. I mean, I think she said on her own program, played last night that it's hundreds of institutions that she's helped get through all kinds of things like Moody's and all that kind of thing. So she's run worldwide businesses for some real great companies, Merrill Lynch and Goldman Sachs. She serves on investment committee for Northwest Connecticut Community Foundation. That's free of charge. She does that.
The Wiederhold Foundation?
Yeah.
She was appointed by the State Attorney General for that role.
For the Wiederhold Foundation?
Wiederhold Foundation, yeah.
Yeah. So this is a lady who is retired. She has a lot of time, but she normally spends helping other institutions around the state and the town and the country. And now since becoming mayor, she's devoted, I would say, 50, 60 hours a week to this job because she has the time. She's retired, and she has the personal ability to do it. She has the experience, and she is not lacking for funds. So she spends a lot of time here. Some people think she's mismanaging or micromanaging. I don't agree with that at all. Micromanaging means going in and giving direction to people. She doesn't do that. Nobody has even accused her of that, and nobody probably will either because she doesn't do it. So I think she's getting good support. You can see in the meetings and in the clips that she pretty well encourages team building, thanks everybody for everything they do, and all that kind of thing. She's a regular Jane, public high school in decaying Milltown up in Maine, similar to what we have here. Her family was all in the military service. She raised herself by the bootstraps through ambition and drive, which Kenny did the same thing.
I think there are some similarities, although she's head and shoulders above me. But there are a lot of similarities, and one of the things to complement her financial expertise and her drive to want to do something good for the town is the fact that she's donated so much time, as has Glenn and Candace and other Republican members of the committee, the Selectmen's Committee. And you and I were over to the Senior Citizen Center, when we did some planting. But I mean, they've done far more than I have. I know you've helped out on some other projects that they've had around the town hall and down at the park, and it's just she is, as you said, she's a regular person, and she does a lot of things to help other people, and I think that's commendable. And I think that people should know that she does donate as much time as she does to these other events. I mean, and she doesn't need to do this.
And by the way,
she chooses to do that.
She's the last one to say anything about it.
Exactly.
I mean, it's up to us to blow her horn a little and trumpet, because if it were up to her, she wouldn't do that whatsoever. And
before she ran for office, I know when we had fundraisers, car washes or whatnot, she was always the first one there and the last one to go home. She was always donating her time.
Oh, there's no doubt. She's a hard worker, and she's a good team builder. And part of the things we all have in common is that we all tackle real difficult problems, and that sort of forces you to think a certain way and do certain things to be successful. Now, the other thing I want to say too is that Glenn, he has a full-time job. Matter of fact, he probably has to work 50, 60 hours a week just on his own job, and yet he spends a lot of time working in the selectman role, and nights, weekends, and all that kind of thing, interruptions during the day while he's working with phone calls. You'd be surprised how many phone calls, text messages, emails you get, and all that kind of thing. So he's really done a great job. And I remember one thing about Glenn from past studies is when he was young, he went to trade school. I went 2 years to trade school myself as well down at Oliver Wolcott. And he invented a mailbox that it's almost impossible to break this mailbox. There's one in front of his house out in Winchester. And he got the patents on that mailbox at a very young age. And it comes to my attention because I live on the lake, and people are always crashing your mailboxes all the time.
Snowplows, right?
Yeah, well, not only that, but kids with baseball bats and shovels and everything. And I always said, gee, wouldn't it be nice to have a mailbox that didn't break? Well, so he's had his hands in a lot of things, a lot of interesting things, and solving different kind of problems along the way. And I want to say one other thing before I get on to my next question, which I'm dying to ask. And I want to say to you, and I've told this on other programs, and I'll say it to everybody, if we had to hire somebody like Marcia Sterling to be our mayor with the financial background she has, or even as a consultant to us, but of course as a mayor she has the powers of the finance board that help her get things done. Consultants don't always have that, but we'd have to pay her $350,000 to pay $500,000 a year if we're lucky.
Right.
Matter of fact, I don't think you could get Marcia for that kind of money. Other people offer $1 million a year to go do this for big international companies and stuff like that. So this is a real break. And I've got this harebrained idea that says once we elect them, which we should do, both Marcia and Glenn, we need them both in there. One of them won't do because then we won't have the strength we need in the finance board that we have today. It'll get weaker. But once we're in there, if we can replace the town manager, which we're in the process of doing if they get elected, they're in that process, then maybe we ought to find another Marcia who's made a lot of money, who's been very successful in finance, and who is willing to donate their time to the town to be our town manager for 4 or 5 years. Because it is going to take 3 to 5, maybe a little more years to get back.
Absolutely.
To get back going again, right? It's not going to happen overnight, no matter who's in there. Right. So with a strong finance board, 90% of our problem, and a strong financial-oriented mayor who has time to spend full time. Now, of course, that's not forever. Once the team gets built up stronger, you have a good, strong financial town manager, you have a good, strong financial finance director, and a good treasurer working 20 hours a week instead of 6, then it'll be less demanding for Marcia and Glenn and everybody else, the younger people too, because they got jobs, they got to work. Right. So now I want to ask you this next burning question I have here. What do you feel that the Republican team have accomplished to date?
Well, I think they started out by laying the proper groundwork. They had a budget that works, that actually worked, the first one in a long time. They've got the staff better positioned and supported. They place appropriate emphasis on controls, in basically, with as far as the audit's concerned. And it's not that they don't just walk the walk, they talk the talk. We've actually gotten stuff done. The Halbert Avenue Bridge that was closed for absolutely no reason whatsoever, it's only because of Marcia and Glenn and the rest of the Republicans that thing was opened up. There was no reason for that to happen. In the reports, the engineer reports, they said that it was structurally sound. It was just a deck that had some potholes and some exposed rebar. And that thing would have stayed closed. It would probably still be closed if it was left up to the powers that be before Marcia and Glenn jumped on board. They've also saved us from this Lambert Cave fiasco. The first selectmen's meeting that I went to, since I chose not to run again mostly for health reasons, but was not the last meeting, it was the meeting before. And I was appalled that 7 or 8 people got up and spoke of this David, is it Vines? I think that's how you say his last name. Yeah, Vines, yeah. That he wasn't a bad guy. It absolutely appalled me. And I had to get up and say something that, it's like, if anyone else in that room had dealings with him on a professional business basis, they wouldn't even so much have had a cup of coffee with the guy. Yet because they were trying to paint, Marcia as, sticking her nose where it didn't belong, and, he wasn't that bad of a guy, and he wasn't, he was only the go-between or a broker or something. I mean, none of this ever should have happened, and, we should be thanking Marcia for, outing this guy for what he was in this company. It was no good. It was a rotten deal from the beginning, and I think that the people realize that now, and I think that they should be thanking her for getting us out of this mess.
Yeah, it should also expose the town managers 9 months of not communicating with the finance board and the leadership in the town.
And that's another problem in itself. I've had some disagreements, excuse me, with Dale when I was on the board, and I mentioned this again at that night. I did speak during public comment. We as a town need to stop hiring people just because they're nice. And the example that I gave was just from my own experience. I think you're a nice guy, Brian, but I would never hire you to come work for me because you can't drive a truck and you can't run a bulldozer or an excavator. That's
for sure.
You're a nice guy. Yeah. But, we need to stop putting people that are just bound for failure. And, I was not in favor of hiring Dale Martin from the get-go. and neither was Selectman Albanesius or Selectman Beadle at the time.
And nor was Ralph Nader. Remember when he showed up at the meeting and he pushed some guy from Bristol or somewhere?
Or somewhere, Newtown or something like that. But regardless, I mean, we've gotten ourselves to this point, but this is why we're in the position that we are. We continually do this. And, we try to sing the praises, because they're nice people. Some woman got up and said that, it was nice that he slept in the park. And that is. All that stuff is admirable. But, if you want to sail a ship someplace, you need a captain. If you want to drive a truck, you need a truck driver. If you want to operate a piece of machinery, you need an operator, not someone that's a nice guy.
Yeah, and you need somebody who can grow the grand list and who can keep the budget to the expenses agreed by the at the town budget meeting.
And that was a point of contention the last time that I was in with Glenn. We knew, as did the rest of the Board of Selectmen, we knew that there were $2.5 million in unpaid bills, and for whatever reason, the town manager and the Democrats just kind of like pushed that to the side like it didn't exist, and they presented a budget that didn't even bring that into light. And we stood up vehemently, opposed that, time and time again. And yet, they were able to get that budget passed without even mentioning that $2.5 million in unpaid bills. So now, that's the kind of stuff that gets us in trouble.
Do you think that this new team, the strong finance board we have with Marcia and Glenn leading it, is showing the Hartford state and investors in the town here and elsewhere that there's a new team in town, a team that can be a good partner instead of an embarrassment?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that with their connections, I think Jay Case has been instrumental as far as the Hollywood Bridge is concerned. The bridge on North Main Street, where the metal railings were in need of paint, and there was a lot of asbestos in the paint. So they were removed, and parapet walls made of concrete were replaced. I mean, that was all because of Jay and his work, with Clark Chapin and others. Yes. And, their close allegiance with Marcia and Glenn. I mean, their ability to talk to these people and have conversation, this is the kind of things that'll happen, and this is what's needed to get this stuff done.
Yeah, I remember when Jay was running and people were saying, gee, we really need a Democrat to win that election because then they'll be able to get more done in Hartford. My own view is that Jay's getting more done in Hartford than anybody else I could imagine.
I think his freshman term has been phenomenal. I mean, he's done a lot, not just for Winston, but for surrounding towns.
Yep.
But for ourselves here, I mean, he's done a tremendous amount of work, I think, and kudos to him.
Yeah, and they make a strong team. So that if I kind of think Jay, with a lot of work and help, is going to get elected again in November. If we can get Marcia and Glenn in there again, that we're going to have a strong say not only in local affairs and but also down in Hartford still, because Jay's already done a wonderful job at opening doors down there and closing some doors for us too. Now, without putting words in their mouths, I know you're very close to them. What do you think they should be trying to do next?
Well, I think the exodus of personnel is key. I mean, we're looking at hiring a new police chief. To some extent, we need to go through civil service. The public works director job is open. I'm hopeful that Ross has a couple weeks, the interim town manager. It was my understanding that they wanted to go off of an existing list, which really didn't have too many people on there. But I mean, those are critical. I think that we have a new finance director right now. There's some talk about who they're going to hire for the treasurer and give them some more duties, which I think is inevitable. If we want to have some controls and do things that need to be done and done properly this time, that's something that we need to do.
And that's being, of course, at the last select meeting, that was recommended by the new finance director, who says everybody does it. Why don't we do it?
Yeah.
We should do it. And I was a little appalled to hear that, because we've already had in the last year 4 or so different financial directors, and that's the first we heard of that. And as a troubleshooter type guy, I always say, well, I wonder what else is under there that we don't know about, that we should know about. Right. We should get it all out in the open, set up a good, strong financial check and balance, bunch of checks and balances. And the lady did say at the last meeting that the finance manager said that, or finance director, I guess, said that that this treasurer's job, 20 hours a week, is very important for checks and balances in the financial area.
And it makes sense.
Yep.
I mean, that's not telling you anything. You know that.
I know. Yeah, we're going there. So So what else do you think
Well, I think they need to continue with their razor sharp focus on the finances. I mean, this is critical. We're not out of the woods yet. We need to get a handle on our expenses, and finally, I believe this year we should catch up with the audits that we're so far behind on.
Yeah.
They were years and years. I know they've been making some grounds, catching up a little bit, and I believe this year should get us back even with the board where we need to be.
But it has to. Let me tell you my view on audits. I've said it many, many, many times. You don't get late on audits. You get them,
right.
You stop everything, you put more money in that area, you move some people around, you have to do whatever you have to do to get those audits done, because my own view is that part of the reason the audits aren't done is because people don't want that information to get out in the open before a new budget or before an election.
Right.
And it's dragged out into this ridiculous situation that we're in now.
I think the fact that they've got that $500,000 steep grant money to clean up Lambert K, that's an impetus. I mean, there's a starting point right there. We can start cleaning up some of these contaminated properties and hopefully market them. I don't know if there's other people that are interested. I think there are in that property, and I think that they should diligently work on getting someone in that's going to do something with that property.
Yeah, and
we have other interests. A viable customer this time.
Yeah, the other thing I like that they're doing is they have a razor-sharp focus on the current year cash flow, where they have a meeting every 2 weeks with the finance director and the town manager, and they try to get all the facts out in the open and then take action on a biweekly basis to keep our budget on track so we don't overspend it like we have. I think in the last 4, the audits will all prove this in the end, but all the audits over the last that have got done over the last few years show that on average we're about $200,000 over on expenses every year.
And this is another. We mentioned this early on. I mean, now there in itself, there's one fantastic thing I think that Mayor Sterling has done by having these meetings. Meets with the finance director. Before it was Cindy Rhines, and after Robin left, and now, like I said, we have the new gal in town. That's the director.
Yep.
And there was always a couple of Republicans. I know that Marcia invited either Selectman Clausen or Perez to attend, and on more than one occasion, I've listened to Selectman Perez. She gets her hair up there a little bit and says that she didn't attend the meeting. The meeting was on a day she couldn't come, and I look at that as she's just trying to make some waves about not being included in the process. And I know that according to Marcia, she's emailed her or called her, whatever, made the point to having her there or Selectman Clausen. But it just takes away from what the purpose of the meeting is.
Again, you're talking about politics here, because let me tell you, you shouldn't run for selectman or finance board, especially if you can't devote the time to do the job properly. And I did check the absentee records, and Selectman Clausen's been absent for like 30% of the meetings so far, maybe a little less because he started attending more once I pointed that out. And Selectman Perez, 10 or 13% of the meetings. Now, Republicans have a couple too that were not there, but not as high as those kind of numbers. So I think they have to join in and be part of the team, and they have to work in such a way that they all work together. And they're not sitting there blaming each other all the time. That doesn't help at all.
I got to say for myself, Brian, and I know you know this, but when I first became selectman, and I was asked, Karen Beadle asked me several times in years, previous to this, and I always put her off, and and other people too. But when I became selectman the first time around, and I was mayor, on more than one occasion, I flew myself home so I wouldn't miss the meeting. I took it that seriously, and and I was in town hall not every single day, but most every single day. I was at one time, or during the day, either the morning or the afternoon, or sometimes in the evening. I thought that it was an important job, and I didn't micromanage anybody, but I did what I thought was the right thing to do, and I made sure that I was apprised of whatever was going on, and I took it very seriously. And I know that Marcia does too, as well as Glenn, and I know Candace puts a lot of time in too.
And you'll never hear this statement from them. We're only volunteers.
Right. I know.
I don't like that at all. It drives me crazy because I won't volunteer for anything unless I can do it.
Right.
Now, I was on the Water and the Inland Wetland Commission for 3 years. I think I missed one meeting out of 3 years because my granddaughter was graduating from college. I had to go out to the Midwest. I've been on other commissions like the Charter Review where I never missed one meeting, right? But I wouldn't, when I was working and I ran a business, I didn't have much time to do that kind of thing, so I didn't get involved. But there's been a lot of staff turnover here. Are you comfortable that that's a good sign and not a bad sign?
Oh, I think that doesn't bother me at all. I mean, some of these people, or most of them have left. You know, Robin took a job back. Her position was still open. I think she was a little homesick. I know I talked to her on several occasions before she left, and you know, it was overwhelming. And you know, I think the other thing was that you know some of the staff need to have a little bit more expertise in what they were doing. I think that she was left to do a lot of work that she thought that she should be able to, you know, divert to other people. And you know, I think she had a lot of people coming to her asking her questions constantly. And I think it was overwhelming. The police chief took a job in his hometown as town manager. I mean, that was if I remember correctly, a substantial increase in pay. And as I said, it was right there in his own hometown.
Sure. Well, these are good people. Like this police, the leader of the police. He's an excellent guy.
Right.
I mean, he's in demand. People want him, and they want to give him more money. You know?
And as far as the public works director goes, I mean, all these people left of their own free will. I mean, no one forced them out. No one asked them to resign. From what I understand, with Neil Amwake, I know he was looking to have I'm not sure exactly what the title was, but it was someone underneath him, someone like a street superintendent that could handle the day-to-day stuff so he could do whatever, obviously something else. And once that wasn't in the budget, you know, he turned in his resignation. Then he said he wanted to come back after he left, but, you know, these things happen.
Yep.
You know, like I said, they left of their own free will.
Yeah. And I kind of agree with you on that. Not only that, but these kind of people that are good, like the police and the Robin, but they're not short-sighted. Right. They can see right away when they read the writing on the wall that they're in for a long haul here, like you and I agree, to get this thing squared away. A lot of hours, a lot of time, maybe not the best pay in the world, maybe not the best support in the world, and they see the writing on the wall, so they probably will head the other way. Now, what do you think of the new town manager, the acting
Ross,
town manager?
I think he's doing a great job, but I just want to step back for just a minute and bring something full circle. I mentioned it earlier. We need to stop hiring people because they're nice people, you know. And I think that's a situation that we got ourselves into earlier. You know, if the public works director wasn't happy with the position that he had, that he wanted someone else to do, we'll call it the grunt work maybe, or free him up for other things. It's not going to work. I know that he sent pictures to the selectmen all the time. I mean, it's easy for someone to come in to any job, but we'll use his as an example because he's the guy that left. The trucks are no good, the roller's no good. I mean, those things aren't going to happen. We're not going to, in our financial situation, we're not going to go out and buy 5 or 7 or 10 new dump trucks at $140,000 or $180,000 a piece. A roller that they're going to use, maybe 3-4 weeks out of a year, another $50,000, $60,000. It's just not going to happen. And to hire someone that's the route that they want to take, you've just wasted their time and ours and the taxpayers. When they interview these guys, they know what the situation is. If they're not willing to step up and take this challenge, then they're just bound for failure.
Kenny, you're really surprising me here. Do you mean you're not in favor of name recognition for getting selectmen and finance board jobs in this town?
No, we're not voting for prom king or queen here. This is serious business, and just because the name resonates with you, it's like I think my daughter went to school by that last name, or I had a coach in school. He was a nice guy by that name. I'm just going to vote for that one, and I think that's a problem. Along with apathy that enough people don't come out to vote. I think a lot of people that do come out to vote, unfortunately, aren't up to speed as far as all the problems. It is. Yeah. In today's economy, where husbands and wives or spouses are working a job or 2 jobs, really, it is. And when you pick up the paper or you turn on the TV,
or no jobs.
Yeah, exactly. Or you turn on the TV and you hear this stuff, who do I believe? Do I believe the 7 o'clock show, or do I believe that 9 o'clock show? It's tough.
I know it's very difficult, and I can tell you, in all my years around the world working in business, I never hired anybody for name recognition.
Yeah.
I wanted to know if they were qualified to do the job, and I checked them out every way, which way from Sunday, and always put them into a very hard, tricky, dangerous job, and that had to be done by a certain date, and had to be done responsibly. Now, what about the new finance director? Do you have any comment about
I haven't met the woman. I saw her on TV for maybe 5 or 6 minutes. She spoke, and when she did speak, it was about the treasurer position, and I believe according to chart that's her hire.
Okay.
And I think that's a necessary thing to do.
Yeah, good. I hope they got a good person there, and I hope that she can stay here with us over the next few years, because again, it's going to take 3 to 5 years. Now, as far as the town garage, I guess it's called the public works director, I keep hearing rumors that he was basically hired for his water and sewer background. And we really have the biggest problem we have in town are the roads. With the 81 miles of roads built for 80 factories many years ago. Well,
I know you're an older guy, and I don't mean that disrespectfully, but I'm going to refresh your memory a little bit.
Okay.
When before this hire came along, our community lawyer, I'm sorry, not town attorney, I went to get confused with Kevin, Miss Charlene Lavoie, was adamant that we disband the Water and Sewer Commission. You remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Dick Nolette,
sure.
Steve Vail, they all had to go. They were doing a bad job. And, I think that, she put the bug in the ear of some of the Democrats and the town manager that this is what we need. We need to hire a public works director that has an engineering degree in water. Well, we built the water treatment plant. We upgraded the sewer plant that we have. That's the last thing we need is an engineer, for water and sewer. We need someone with management skills that can motivate the people that we have down there and make sure that they work. That's what we need.
Yeah.
And in Jim Rotundo, I think he did an excellent job as far as scoping out the roads that needed to be repaired. I think he put a lot of time and effort into that, and I applaud him for that. But here again, we need someone with management skills that can work with the public works employees that we have and get things done. As far as the road work that's going on right now, I mean, everything's being done as it should be. These roads, they're not just skimming over an inch of asphalt. I mean, the roads that were addressed, that were going to be fixed, they've been milled down to where they need to be. They're going to be putting a base of asphalt and a top coat up there on top of that, and that's being done properly. It really irritates me to listen to people who have no knowledge of road building or how it works to say that this is patchwork. I know one fella got up, I think it was at the Gilbert School, and said $600,000 won't pave us from here to the door. I mean, obviously he doesn't have a clue what's going on.
That's right.
And and I tried to help out as much as I could there when I was asked. They were able to secure the milling prices at a rate that was bid on for state work. They also had the towns are allowed to piggyback on that, as well as the asphalt prices.
Well, Marcia and yourself saved the town a lot of money.
I mean, they're
on that whole process.
Right,
We're going to get a lot more work done.
Immense amount. They're getting an immense amount of work done for, I mean, it's not cheap. Nothing is. But it was a lot cheaper than if they just went out to bid, for themselves.
And we have to put up with a little bit of a delay here and there because there's other priorities pop up, managed by exception, where the state needs to do something quicker that they didn't expect.
It was two separate. It was two separate entities. Costello did the milling of the road. They were the low bidder for the milling, and Galasso was going to do the paving of the roads. And I just want to throw a sidebar out there. I didn't see that. I don't get the papers. I didn't read it, but I've been told that there's been a lot of comments that, Fracasso's getting all the no-bid work in town. Nothing could be farther from the truth. Canton Village Construction had made a deal with Costello Industries to take the millings, and Dan Baer from Canton Village Construction hired me, and there was a couple of Canton Village trucks on the job too, to haul the millings back to his yard. So, and here again, this is the problem. You know, people like to make a lot of noise.
Of course.
They throw some stuff on the wall, and they know that some of it's going to stick.
Of course,
you know,
politics.
not much of it.
Yeah.
But I mean, and this is the sad part. You know, no one can do anything or say anything in this town that doesn't get misconstrued or misaligned by someone, and they take and they run with it like a dog with a bone.
And all these people that stand up at the meetings, none of them have ever done a road.
Yeah.
But let me say to you, anybody who has done roads, all agree.
Right.
I mean, David Point was in there. You were in there, and Mickey Ham and everybody who's done a lot of work on roads. I think David did a lot in the service when he was in the service. They all said they're making a big deal out of a very little problem here.
Right.
You know, we can get on with it right away. We wasted months of people not being able to use the bridges and that kind of thing, and it's really crazy. Also, I was led to believe that the public works person also wanted to hire a roads person for $100,000 a year, or package or something like that, to do a couple $100,000 of work. You know, and if you keep that person for 10 years, that's $1 million. So I'm very happy with the way it's going. And if Ray, if you can put up that thank you sign for a couple seconds here, the yellow one, we'll show it. Whereas I had these signs printed up to put on each of these bridges as they get done, with permission of the owners of the property nearby, to thank Marcia and her team for finally getting some road work done.
Right.
We've had it in the budget for the last 5-6 years or something like that, or 4 or 5 years, and we didn't do any.
They keep rolling it over and rolling it over, using it for something else.
Yeah, use it for something else, you know, quietly, without telling everybody. And I want to say another thing to you, and I'll make one point here, and that is that all these decisions that Marsh is making, that Ken had to make when he was on his strong finance board, very difficult decisions. They're hard decisions to make.
Right.
And most people don't understand it when you do make these decisions. That a lot of them are life-saving type decisions, and they got to be made rapidly. They got to be made in a timely manner, or you're going to have much worse problems going on. And if we go at the rate we're going here, with spending $700,000 a year, we're 10 years away from getting all these roads done. By then we have to start doing them again, you know. So I'm very appreciative of Marcia. I paid out of my own pocket to have these signs made. I personally will put them up around town with permission from the owners, to thank her and her team for finally unsticking this road problem and getting it going. So and
it's out there for the public to see, and I believe Marcia said something along these lines that, you know, if you like the things that are happening, and you know, the road improvements and the financial things that are going on, you know, then you'll vote for Marcia and Glenn.
Right.
And if you want business to be the same, you know, then you'll vote for the other two.
Sure. And if you are there are a lot of people who complain to me. I get all over town every day, and I have coffee all over the place, and I talk to people, and they stop me, and they vent. And at the time when that bridge was closed, I got a lot of people stop me, and they weren't happy about it. And what I say is, any of these things that are happening that help you in your own personal life, your friend's personal life, your relative's personal life, your neighbor's personal life, then get out and vote for these people again, because they're going to continue to do good for this town. Often, as you can see, and for my little song or poem I stated earlier, and we'll be repeating again at the end of the program, they're being booed. They're being having a hard time here, and they still have to make these decisions. And the last thing we want to do, of course, is drive them off. Now, Kenny, do you believe that leopards can change their spots?
No, I don't.
Can we simply rely on the old people doing the same old thing that they've been doing over the last 10 years?
That's what you're going to get. Unless we make some changes, that's exactly what we're going to have.
Yeah, and we've already started to make some changes.
We have, and that's why I said, you know, the people can make this choice, and they should. If they want some changes, they need to vote for Marcia and Glenn. And if they want things to be the same, and the good old boys, and, you know, he's a nice girl, he's a nice guy, you know, we're going to end up with the same stuff. You know, the stuff of the Dems, especially when they don't know, you know, what they're talking about, whether it has to do with roads or drainage or whatever. You know, if you watch these meetings, you know, they're always like, well, you know, we need to get a professional. You know, Selectman Clausen last time, when Marcia brought up the deteriorating brick wall by the cemetery on the Winston Road, You know, and the causes from the snow plows throwing the salt up there that's eaten away. You know, she wanted to have the public works director have their mason take a look at it and give an idea right away. George wants to hire a professional.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, they're going to bankrupt this town. You know,
Yep.
the taxes will never stop going up. If they want to hire a professional, every time we got to check and see what's going on. You know,
Okay.
it's a total waste of our money.
I have to interrupt here because we've only got a minute to go. I'm going to have Kenny back again on our next program next week where we'll talk some more about all this. And I think that you should pass the word to everybody you know in your family and anybody you know in town who's eligible to vote to get down there and vote on the 13th of September. It's all day at Pearson School. And let's get these people back in and let's keep going. Let's sort this town out. And let's not go back to history. Let's not go back to the last 10 years and have to climb out of this hole again. We don't want to do that. With that, I say thank you very much. Join in next week, and we'll talk for another hour about this stuff.
No problem. Pleasure being here. Thank you, Brian.
When I was a young college student at the University of Kansas in conservative country, I was naively very liberal and the leader of a campus political party called Action. How I got that job is a story in itself, but John F. Kennedy was involved. Action invited Pete Seeger to sing at a small gathering, and while talking to him after the concert, he said, "Brian, always try to use a poem or a song to get your point across, because no matter how bad you read or sing, I have heard worse." This one's for you, Pete. The distracting election takes time, money, and such, while the majority retains their professional touch, setting a good example for the rest of us. Town managers suspended for good reason and such, while the majority retains their professional touch, finally getting things done for the rest of us. Our plight is on Facebook, Google, YouTube, and such, while the majority retains their professional touch, setting a good example for the rest of us. There's lying, cheating, stealing, and such, while the majority retains their professional touch, finally getting things done for the rest of us. There's jumping, threatening, booing, and such, while the majority retains their professional touch, setting a good example for the rest of us. There's hollering, texting, and passing the buck, while the majority retains their professional touch, finally getting things done for the rest of us. There are people out of order, yelling, cursing, and such, while the majority retains their professional touch, setting a good example for the rest of us. There's poor attendance, pushback, repeating, and such, while the majority retains their professional touch, finally getting things done for the rest of us. The charter's ignored, misinterpreted, misquoted, and such, while the majority retains their professional touch, setting a good example for the rest of us. The grand list won't grow. Budgets have been overrun, while the majority retains their professional touch, finally getting things done for the rest of us. The eligible voters' answer to this is so